Imagine holding a glass of beer in your hands. Bubbles rise like tiny lights racing toward the surface. The foam spills over like a fleeting crown, and the intoxicating aroma invites you into a moment of pleasure. But what if I told you that what you're drinking isn't just a beverage? What if behind that golden liquid lies an ancient mystery, a secret humanity has forgotten, one that completely changes how we see it? The claim is bold. Beer isn't just a drink. And no, this isn't wordplay or exaggeration. What we're about to uncover is a truth woven through history, spirituality, and the alchemy of the human soul. Because beer, more than a simple mix of water, barley, and yeast, is a portal, a symbol, and a hidden legacy. Its foam, its fermentation, its transformation were seen by the sages of old as a reflection of an inner process of transmutation, a liquid metaphor for the mysteries of life and death. Across this journey, we'll discover how, in ancient civilizations, from Mesopotamia to the rituals of Nordic peoples, beer was understood not as recreation, but as an elixir for spiritual contact, a bridge to the divine, a sacred element. We'll explore how this golden liquid was considered an offering to the gods, a symbol of abundance, fertility, and communion with the invisible forces that sustain existence. We'll also see how, over time, its true meaning diluted, reduced to a commodity, a mass-consumed product stripped of its spiritual character. Yet, even today, the keys to its mystery remain intact. For those who dare to look beyond the obvious and realize that what we drink can also be a living metaphor of the soul awakening. On this journey, we'll unravel the hidden meaning of beer from an esoteric and philosophical perspective. We'll reveal how its preparation mirrors the art of alchemy, and why its use in ancient rituals was tied to awakening consciousness. But we'll also face the contrast, how, when drunk without awareness, it can become a trap, a veil that numbs the spirit and pulls it away from clarity. This isn't a video about nutrition or the physical effects of alcohol. It's a revelation about the spiritual and symbolic dimension of beer, a forgotten secret that can change the way you relate to it, and even the way you see ordinary objects in your life. Because if beer isn't just a drink, then what is it? Get ready. What you're about to discover may transform not only how you see a simple glass of golden foam, but also how you understand the mysteries hidden in the everyday gestures of your life. When we hear the word beer, the modern mind instantly links it with fun, celebrations, bars, and gatherings. But if we travel back in time, if we let our awareness enter the civilizations that came before us, we'll see that this golden liquid wasn't created for leisure, but for the sacred. In its origins, beer wasn't just drunk, it was revered. In ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, beer wasn't just a brew, but a gift from the gods. The Sumerians wrote hymns to Ninkasi, the goddess of fermentation, celebrating the power to turn grain into vital nectar. That fermentation was seen as a tangible miracle, proof that matter could be elevated to a higher, almost spiritual state. Here lies the first clue. Beer as a metaphor for the human being who through life's challenges is transformed, refined, and awakened. In Egypt, beer was no less sacred. It was offered to the gods in rituals and used in rites of passage like births and funerals. It was said that even the gods drank beer to stay in communion with earth and with humanity. For pharaohs, the fermented liquid symbolized abundance and fertility, a reminder that all of existence is sustained by cycles of transformation. Isn't fermentation itself a mirror of the soul's process of dying and being reborn with every experience? In Northern Europe, we find another perspective. For the Nordic peoples, mead and beer were considered drinks of immortality. Valhalla, the hall of the fallen, was always overflowing with tankards, because for them the eternal feast represented not just pleasure, but the celebration of life beyond death. Again, beer reveals itself as a symbol of what endures, of what never truly dies but is reborn with every sip. Philosophy also carried this mystery. Plato and other thinkers saw in the rituals of drinking a representation of spiritual communion. It was an intoxication that mattered, but the shift in consciousness that allowed humans to glimpse subtler realities. Beer, along with other fermented drinks, was seen as a vehicle into that liminal state between waking and dreaming, a space where the soul could remember it was more than just a body. Over time, though, this sacred dimension faded. What was once an elixir of connection became a consumer product. Humanity forgot that by drinking it, we were participating in an alchemical rite, the transformation of the dense into the subtle, of the mortal into the eternal. Beer is far more than a beverage. It is a mirror of our own spiritual history. By recalling its true place in ancient cultures, we rediscover that the ordinary can hide profound mysteries, waiting for those willing to look beyond the foam. Many believe beer is only for social enjoyment, a companion to conversation and festivities, but its true meaning lies hidden in a process humanity has known for thousands of years: the alchemy of fermentation. Behind that quiet bubbling, behind the yeast that transforms grain into golden liquid, lies one of the most powerful metaphors of the human journey toward expanded consciousness. Fermentation is, at its core, an act of death and rebirth. The solid, limited grain dies during preparation. It is broken, boiled, and transformed into wort. Then, through the action of yeast, that inert broth takes on new life and becomes something entirely different, a liquid full of energy and motion. The same happens with us as human beings. To be born into a new stage, to reach maturity of consciousness, we have to let certain parts of ourselves die. The rigid ego, the limiting beliefs, the habits that chain us down, all of these must go through that inner alchemy. Only then, like the grain, can we become something more refined, more subtle, more alive. What makes beer different from other substances is its direct connection to earth and fire. The grain comes from the earth, the result of human labor and the natural cycle. But to become a drink, it needs the fire that cooks and prepares it. Earth and fire come together at the beginning. Then air enters, represented by the bubbles of fermentation. Finally, water sustains it all. In this simple process, we find the four elements working in harmony, just as ancient traditions taught. Beer, then, is not simply a beverage. It is a symbolic reflection of the universe, living proof that when the elements unite, they generate life and transformation. But here's the crucial point. What was this liquid actually used for? In ancient cultures, beer was consumed in ceremonies as a bridge to other states of perception. The slight dizziness it produced wasn't seen as drunkenness, but as an opening. It was a way of loosening the grip of the rational mind so the spirit could hear what everyday mental noise normally blocks. A bridge to the unseen. Drinking beer in ritual was like lighting a lamp in the dark. The light wasn't in the drink itself, but in the state of openness it created. Shamans, priests, and seekers understood that this state was sacred because it allowed access to the wisdom dwelling deep within the unconscious. Today, though, beer has been stripped of that meaning. It's consumed excessively, reduced to a simple product with no sacred character. And here lies the great contrast. What was once conceived as a key to expansion has become a chain that binds modern people to distraction and self-forgetfulness. The difference isn't in the drink, but in the intention. A sacred object misused becomes its opposite. Understanding beer as a symbol means reclaiming its true power. It isn't about glorifying consumption, but about remembering the teaching. Everything in nature can become a vehicle of transformation if we learn to look beyond the obvious. The grain that becomes liquid is the soul awakening after its own symbolic death. The rising bubbles are the spirit remembering its lightness, and the act of drinking in communion is union with the life that pulses through every corner of the universe. In this first part, we've opened the door, beer as alchemy of the elements and a mirror of the human process. In the second part, we'll dive deeper into what this symbolic cord linking us with Earth and the divine truly means, and how misusing the sacred can turn into poison for the spirit. We've already seen that beer was never just a drink. It was a living symbol of spiritual alchemy, a tangible representation of the four elements and a tool for ritual. But with time and with the loss of life's sacred sense, that spiritual key became an invisible trap. Beer stopped being a gateway to the divine and turned into a detour into forgetfulness. In ancient cultures, its use was carefully regulated through rituals and ceremonies. No one drank by chance or for casual fun. Each sip was intentional, charged with purpose, aimed at invoking forces, connecting with the earth, or opening the mind to the unseen. Excess was forbidden because they knew imbalance distorted the spiritual experience. The drink was never the end. It was the means. But as societies lost touch with the sacred, beer shifted from being a symbol of communion to just another form of distraction. Modern people, cut off from nature's rhythms, began to drink not to remember who they are, but to forget what they have become. And that's the tragedy. What was once spiritual medicine has now become existential anesthesia. Here lies a paradox. The same substance that once helped weaken the ego so the spirit could emerge now feeds a numbed ego, trapped in unconsciousness. The issue isn't the substance, but the intention and the use. A knife can slice bread or cause harm. It all depends on the hand that holds it. The modern abuse of beer and of many other substances points to a deeper spiritual wound, the forgetting of life's sacredness. When people lose connection with the divine, they try to fill that emptiness with the material, the sensory, the immediate. They drink for pleasure, to escape their pain, or to avoid looking inward. What was once a key to the depths is now used as a lock to avoid seeing the essential. Still, even in this distortion, the symbol endures. The alchemy of fermentation, the union of the elements, the wisdom in transforming grain into liquid. All of this continues to remind us of what we're capable of. Beer speaks to us even if we don't always listen. It reminds us that life is transformation, that nothing stays fixed, and that rebirth is always possible, even in the midst of apparent death. Recovering this sacred perspective doesn't mean returning to ritual drinking. It means learning to see the spiritual dimension hidden in everyday acts. Every meal, every breath, every moment can be sacred if lived with awareness. Beer as a symbol invites us to remember that the true ritual isn't in the object but in the intention with which we live. Its real teaching isn't that we must drink it, but that we must live as it teaches. Let die what no longer serves, transform with the help of the elements around us, and be reborn fuller, lighter, more alive. The bubble rising in the glass is the same as the bubble rising in our soul when we lift ourselves above the weight of the material. And if one thing should be clear, it's this: the sacred never disappears. It only hides behind what we profane. Beer didn't lose its spiritual character. We lost the vision to see it. Rediscovering it is like lighting a lamp in the dark again. It's remembering that everything in existence can be a doorway to the eternal. So far, we've explored the duality, sacred use and profane abuse, the key and the lock, light and shadow. Now, in the next section, we'll see how these teachings can become practical keys for daily life. No ancient rituals or external substances required. When we recognize that beer is not just a drink, but a symbol of transformation and an echo of the divine, an inevitable question comes up. How can we bring this wisdom into everyday life, beyond lost rituals and modern misuse? The answer lies in transforming every act, every decision, and every moment into a gesture of awareness. It's not about recreating ancient ceremonies exactly, but about reclaiming their spirit and applying it to the present. The first key is to honor constant transformation. Just as the grain dies to become beer, we too must let go of certain parts of our lives to make room for something greater. Too often we cling to habits, relationships, or thoughts that no longer serve us, as if holding on could protect us. But the teaching is clear. What doesn't transform stagnates, and what stagnates eventually decays. Life calls us to transmute, like the grain that becomes something new. The second key is conscious intention. In ancient cultures, ritual wasn't an excuse to drink, but a way of channeling energy toward a purpose. Today, we can reclaim that by remembering that every action, no matter how small, holds power if done with intention. Eating, walking, breathing, or even talking can become sacred when carried out with a higher purpose in mind. Beer then shifts from being an external symbol to an internal reminder. Nothing is trivial. Everything can be a portal. The third key is learning to tell the difference between escape and communion. The abuse of beer and other substances often reflects the desire to escape pain or reality. True spirituality doesn't escape, it integrates. Ask yourself, am I choosing to forget who I am or to remember my essence? Every time you choose the latter, you recover the lost sense of ritual, even without altars or chants. The fourth key is living in harmony with the elements. Water, air, fire, and earth are not just natural forces, but reflections of the universe within us. The water of our emotions, the air of our thoughts, the fire of our will, the earth of our body, all need balance. Just as beer unites the four elements in one alchemical act, we too must learn to unify them in order to live in harmony. Finally, the fifth key is re-enchanting life. We've lost the ability to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, and that may be the greatest tragedy of all. Beer reminds us that even the simplest things, a grain of cereal, a bubbling fermentation, can hold divine mystery. If we learn to see with that perspective, every gesture regains its light. Drinking a glass of water becomes a blessing. Looking at the sky becomes a silent prayer. Sharing bread becomes communion. The secret isn't in beer or any substance outside us. It's in our gaze. It's in reclaiming the power to live with awareness, with gratitude, and with the understanding that anything can be sacred if we choose it to be. Imagine for a moment that everything we consider ordinary today, from drinking a glass of water to sharing a meal, regained the power it once held for ancient cultures. Imagine recognizing a door to the sacred behind every gesture. Isn't that what we lost when we reduced beer, a symbol of communion and transformation, to a simple consumer product? Originally, beer was much more than a drink. It was a reminder that the divine walked the earth and that humans could touch the sacred through alchemy, through transforming the simple into the extraordinary. Today, though, we've forgotten that language. We've reduced ritual to entertainment and symbol to merchandise. And the greatest loss is that in doing so, we've forgotten that we ourselves are living processes of transformation. This forgetting is not small. When we stop seeing with wonder, when we turn the sacred into the trivial, we cut ourselves off from our own inner power. It's not beer that lost its essence. It's us who lost the vision to recognize the divine in it and in everything around us. But here lies a powerful opportunity to recover the lost ritual in everyday life. You don't need altars or ancestral fires to remember the mystery. It's enough for each action, thought, and decision to carry awareness. It's enough to recognize that eating, drinking, breathing, and loving are not ordinary acts, but reminders that life itself is the greatest temple. Beer then becomes a mirror showing us our capacity to choose. Will we use it as an escape, a vehicle of forgetfulness, or as a symbol of transformation and communion? That choice is personal, and in it lies the difference between a mechanical life and a conscious life. Remember, everything that enters your body, food, drink, words, or thoughts, becomes part of you. What do you choose to nourish? If grain can be transformed into liquid gold that awakens the soul, then every moment of your life can also be transformed into an act of power, beauty, and wisdom. The final message is clear. It's not about beer, it's about your gaze. If you recover the vision to see the divine in the simple, you'll take a step toward true freedom. You'll realize that the real ritual isn't outside in temples or ancient cultures. It's inside you. Deep within, the invisible cord to the sacred still remains, waiting for you to recognize it. So I invite you, reflect, question, experiment, look at your life with fresh eyes, and dare to transform the everyday into the sacred. Because perhaps the greatest secret isn't that beer is not a drink, but that nothing in this world is. Everything is symbol, everything is message, everything is energy. It's up to you to decide how to live it.